All right, welcome everybody. Welcome. I see Karen, Matt, Lisa, and Erin. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Great.
And ladies. Cool. So tonight we'll just give folks a minute here to roll in as you're coming in. Love to see where you're at and what you're breeding. Just let us know you're here. Say hi, and we'll get this program started here in just a few minutes as I give us a quick introduction. Tonight's program is going to be a little bit different than maybe some of our other ones. It's going to be kind of a roundtable. You know, we got our panelists here. You've seen them on this show before. They have some of the most popular. Karen, don't say that, Karen. They have some of the most popular videos in our series so far, which I find pretty exciting. And so we're just going to assess kind of the 2021 season so far. Pretty much anything goes. We're going to find out what's working for them, maybe what they did to make it work so well. We're going to find out what maybe didn't work so well for them and how that's going to affect their future plans. And so after we get through that discussion and back and forth, we'll open up the line, and you can ask any question you want. You can ask some questions as we go along. We'll take questions as we go tonight. So if somebody says something that you're like, hey, I got to know more about that, then just jump on in, put your question up there. I'll try to monitor as best I can while keeping everything else kind of running. But we got a full house tonight in terms of our presenters. So looking forward to it. Everybody ready?
Yep.
All right. They're all quiet. Before backstage, before we go live, they're all just chatting and having a good time. And then when you hit the magic button, it's like everybody clams up.
You told us to quit with the beer when we went live.
That's a different kind of show. We got to keep it professional around here. All right. So thanks, folks. As you join us, just say hi. I see a couple people in there already. Witch Valley, so excited to be here. Breeding Light Sussex. Looks like we have Lilac Hill Farm, Dominique's Pilgrims, and Saxony Ducks. My neighbor, almost. So, I guess maybe I'll just run a real quick introduction here. I think I'm running through the names already. Karen Johnston, Matt Hemmer, Karen Rhode Island Reds, Matt Faverolles, Erminettes, and Welsummers. Good deal. Lisa Welsummers and
Barred Rocks.
Barred Rocks. Okay. And then Erin Delawares, right?
Yep.
You got anything else running around out there?
Goats and dogs, but that's
okay. No other poultry. Perfect. All right. Here, I see Jess here coming in saying good evening, aspiring breeder here. Glad to have you, Jess. Feel free to soak it all in and get started. Farmer Brad, he's got Australorps. So, all right, folks. We're going to start off tonight. Kind of take advantage of some situational things that have been happening. Mainly some heat, some unexpected heat that's been popping up here across, especially the Pacific Northwest. Some places are always hot, but it is, as we record here, we're on the precipice of July. So the June's behind us for the most part. July's coming up. Heat is a factor we're going to deal with. So I'm going to open up tonight's discussion and just ask kind of two questions. One is how do you deal with your breeding flock in the heat? Some of it in expected heat. So for Matt and Erin particularly, you're in the heat. How do you deal with that scenario? And who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Erin.
Okay. I live in Northern California, outside of Sacramento. Our normal summers, we do not have any rain. We didn't have any rain this winter, but the rain turns off from April, maybe the beginning of May, and we don't get rain until, literally no rain until November. Our temperatures in the summertime range from 90 to 105 consistently every day. Sometimes the lows are in the 60s, sometimes they're in the 70s or 80s. We have very little humidity, but we do have to deal with a lot of continuous heat. Again, I raise Delawares. They're a white breed, so that does help a little bit with the heat. We have 7 small breeding pens. We have the ones that are not under big, huge shade trees. We put pop-ups so that they create shade for the coop and for the birds. We have fans that run 24 hours a day. If it gets above 95, they run all the time. We ice their water down twice a day, around 2 and then around 6. We put apple cider vinegar in there for them, and we spray down the ground to help them try to cool off. And that's what we consistently do that all summer.
And you, in your experience, then that those measures keep them kind of on track in terms of health and stuff? Last
year, as I was mentioning before we started talking, we had horrible fires in California. And for 6 weeks in August and September, we literally had smoky air where you could just not walk outside. But our birds were out in it all the time. And so it was hot and smoky, and we still did all the same things, but we lost 4 hens last year out of about 80 birds, which isn't too bad considering the smoke. But over the years of breeding Delawares and just raising chickens, I know to watch their combs. And if they start turning purple or black, I know they're really, really stressed, and I have to change up whatever I'm doing. And so far this summer, we haven't had any of that. So what we're doing is working for us right now.
Good deal. Thank you for that, Erin. And then, so Matt, what are you doing for your heat down there?
Well, a couple of things. It's really important, like whether it's my adult birds or my grow outs, that those birds have shade. They need, we're out there where we get 250 days of sunshine out here in central Kansas, and we get heat probably, I think the average is 11 days over 100 degrees annually. And a lot of times that's accompanied by humidity, other times not so much, but you got to have ventilation and shade are real keys to keeping birds as comfortable as possible. And then we don't ice the water, but we make sure we're changing water out and getting birds fresh water, through the heat as much as possible. In terms of kind of managing that cycle, I try to hatch as early as I can. I really see a difference growing out birds hatched in January and February versus growing out birds that are hatched in March and April. That heat really impacts growth rates. Those growing birds do not eat when it's 100 degrees. They're worried about staying cool. They're worried about staying in the shade. They're not necessarily worried about having a full crop or full belly. And kind of the same thing with the layers. I like to get a lot of my hatching done before the heat hits, because same thing, they'll go out of production. They again, the adult birds, their focus is going to be on staying cool and staying in the shade. And a couple of the breeds are a little more resilient, but a lot of them just quit. They just take time off, or they go into that mode where they're laying an egg every 3rd day, instead of every day. So,
right. Thank you. And then what about you, Lisa? You had some unexpected heat. I think you said before we came on, you were 50s last week and 115 yesterday. So what did you have to do to your flock?
Well, we're up in the northwest corner of Washington, and normally I'm on an island, so I normally have, wonderful maritime breezes, and I never really think about or deal with heat much with the birds. And then we had this huge heat spike that came in really quickly. So I was a little unprepared in that I, haven't had a lot of experience, but it was pretty obvious that shade and ventilation were important. Luckily, our poultry barn's very well ventilated, so We had a nice chimney effect going through there. And this way that it's situated, we don't get any afternoon sun in there at all. So it is able to cool off relatively quickly. My biggest challenge, my adult birds all did really well. And I was impressed that the ones who did the best were actually my biggest birds, my heritage barred rocks. They're just like acting like nothing's going on. They're not panting. They're over there dust bathing in the shade all day long. I have an orchard, and my birds are loose in the orchard this time of year, so lots of trees, and they were pretty happy. My grow outs, however, are in tractors, and so I had to move a lot of tractors and find shade for all of them, and I don't normally have to do that. So I have a kind of a swamp, and I have basically chicks in a swamp right now because they're still down there, right on the edge of my swamp. Luckily, my tractors are very secure because I have tons of predators, but they're not able to get into the tractors. So, yeah, they're down there with, thinking they're ducks, I think, at about now.
Yeah,
but
so,
everyone's doing okay.
But yeah, good. And so, follow-up question then. And we'll go back around for everybody if you have an answer. But what did you see, if anything, during the heat that helped you with selection, or added to your notes or anything like that? Like anything you observed that's going to come into play later? Yeah,
I certainly noticed my older birds seemed more affected by it. I have some like 7 to 10-year-old hens that I was actually. I have a 7-year-old hen that I breed a lot off of because she's still very productive, and she was fine. She didn't pant. She's one of my Welsummers. And then I have another older hen that was very affected by it. So that kind of was interesting to see the difference. They're kind of from two different lines. I mean, related lines, but two different families that I have. And one of the families seems to be less affected by the heat than the others. So that was, I think, really, I had never noticed anything like that before in regards to the heat because we haven't dealt with the heat. So it was considering too that, climate may be changing. So we are getting warmer up here. And so that's something that I will now consider is more of a heat tolerance. I always look for, good immune systems and very robust health. But I was a little surprised to see some of the birds panting and other ones totally not panting, not holding their wings out and doing all that.
Yeah, sure. Excellent. Interesting observation. Two lines reacting differently. Karen, do you have anything that to add there?
Nah, they covered it. We have heat, but it's all been expected heat at this point. We haven't had anything out of the usual. And I honestly don't do much for them because it's expected. You know what I mean? Like if anybody can't handle it, they don't need to stay. I do shade and, all the other stuff, but I don't do anything special. But I would if it was 115. Yeah. So.
Good cover, Karen.
So Matt or Erin, do you have, in the heat that you're dealing with? I know Matt said that he likes to move his hatching up into the beginning months of the year because he has better performance. But are there anything that you guys are looking for in the heat that affects your selection?
The one thing I like to do with my older birds is see who is still laying in late July. And that's going to help me make some cull decisions later on. If they're, heat's a given, and we want all these birds to be adapted to that. But so just a good kind of look through the group and see who's still performing when it is not like when it's 106, but in typical 95 to 100 degree weather, who's still out there working and who's taking that time off. And that I started that about 3 years ago, and I really feel like I'm keeping better older birds with that as a guide.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Perfect. This year was really odd. We everybody wanted pullets, and so we just kept hatching and hatching and hatching. And so usually we start hatching. Our first hatch is the end of January for us. and then we start taking orders. But because I hatched for so long, my youngest just 6 weeks old this last Sunday, and so I've never had so many young pullets and cockerels this late in the year. And so, but I'm definitely seeing, because I track everything from 6 weeks on for weight, I can look at the 7 hatches I've had for myself this year and see a big difference in weight gain. It's way less now. Plus, they don't have any fresh grass. And our birds lay in the summertime through all the heat. They just lay less. They're actually a better layer in the wintertime. But I still get eggs. They never stop laying.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. So let's move on then. Let's see, check our comments out here. So folks, if you haven't said hi yet in the chat, just go ahead. We got Mike here. Thanks for the live stream, guys. Starting with New Hampshire's from Freedom Ranger Hatchery. That's right. Freedom Ranger is selling new hamps. And so good job, Mike. We'll be interested to see how that plays out over the next year or so. So let's come into just back into the 2021 hatching season so far, the first 6 months, you know, and let's start off with something that went well, something that you did that succeeded. Maybe it was small, maybe it was big, but it was something that you consider a win. Who wants to jump in there?
I'll go first.
Thank you, Lisa.
I was making a list of things that I would say were our pluses for this year, and one of the things was that there was a live stream that APPA did, that you did last year with Douglas Hayes, where it was talking about the 10 profit centers for heritage poultry. And one of the things that he mentioned, which I had never really thought about before and had not done, was doing graded 8-week-old breeding stock. And what I have done some this year is, at the large numbers that I'm growing out for myself, as I start doing my assessments, and my first serious assessment happens at 8 weeks, putting together trios and quads to sell, and was a little bit surprised that I actually have people buying them. And in fact, I have, someone who's probably traveling a whole day in the next couple of days to come. So I don't ship, which is a challenge, I know, for a lot of folks, but I do have people that are willing to drive and pick them up. And it's also a nice way, I think, for me, because I really want to get my breeds out there. I want people to want them and use them, and particularly those who are production oriented, which is what I focus on. And so it's nice to have some people come and get those birds, and then I can help mentor them through the process of growing them up and helping them make their first round of decisions on selection, that sort of thing. So it kind of hooks me up with some other potential breeders in my region. So I've been happy with that.
Have you, Lisa, have you gotten a feel from the people who are buying these older birds, the trios, from you, or what their motivation is? Is it convenience? Is it just getting a jump start kind of thing? Or
well, it's interesting. Some of them, I think it's getting a start, wanting to get a start in the breed. And these are I've been doing this primarily with Welsummers, and one of our main focus is on sort of small pasture-based egg flocks. So they are popular for that, with the dark, speckled, attractive eggs. And so people wanting to get started with their own sustainable flock, which is something that we really try and, get word out and put out in our newsletter and all that sort of thing. But I also had people who I couldn't fit onto my hatching list. So we did another thing this year, in that we did our minimum orders at 50 chicks. So a lot of folks who wanted to get started in something are like, well, I can't buy 50. I can't deal with 50. And so it's a way for me to kind of get them started, but not deal with a lot of small orders, because that's what we were really trying to get away from, was a lot of the small numbers. And I also had people I didn't want to, our shipping has gotten so bad here in this part of the country that I was even not wanting to ship eggs if possible. And so like the gal who's coming this weekend, she wanted to get eggs to start her own flock. She wanted a couple of dozen eggs. I said, well, how about if I give you a quad? I sell you a quad. So she's actually pretty tickled to go that route instead of having to grow out a bunch of chicks. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. There's a couple things that we might circle back into if we have time. But we'll move on here. Who else has got something, a win? I like the fact that Lisa led off with one of the previous live streams. As Susan says, that was a super session. Lots of potential there in that live stream. So if you haven't checked that out yet, it's on our YouTube channel. You can go back and find it. It's the Profit Centers of Pasture Poultry with Douglas.
I have a pro and con that's happened this year. We hatched, like I said, I don't know how many, 7 hatches? I think we did 5. But we have all these cockerels because everybody was buying our pullets up. So I must have 50 or 60 cockerels of different ages. And I don't normally have that many for myself. And so it's a pain having all these cockerels, but boy, do I have a great selection to work from. And that's the con. I don't usually have this many cockerels to choose from. And so that was eye-opening to realize. Usually I'm processing at 12 weeks. And so I've got one guy that's 20 weeks and I've got all the way down to 6 weeks. So I have a lot to select from, which is really good.
Right. And that's an advantage for you, right?
Yes,
Erin?
definitely.
How does that compare with years past? What's your normal?
Normally I would hatch probably about 75 or 80 and then have 40 males, lose a few over the weeks, and then I'll pick 4 or 5 out of that. At 12 or 13 weeks, I'm selecting who's staying, and then the rest get butchered. So this time I have a way more to work from.
Good deal.
I don't know if I do it again, but it's a lot of work.
And we had a comment here from when you were talking last time. Susan Hall says the smoke was really bad out there last year in California. Just given some affirmation to the problems. Thank you, Erin. Matt or Karen, what's a win for you?
I've got a couple of examples of wins, and when you start this whole breeding process, depending on what you can source, and Karen and I, we were talking, off the air early about starting, 6 and 7 years ago, sourcing birds was a challenge, and so, my Welsummers have been a kind of a journey, and I've got a couple projects, my Smoky Blues and a red Erminette project that I've literally kind of started from scratch. And so you go through this process, and you're looking for improvement every year. But this year was probably the first time I had a pretty small early Welsummer hatch, and I put all the pullets up on the table, and I weighed them all, and they probably were within probably 1/3 of a pound of each other. They were all in the ideal weight range. I looked at them, and I'm just like, I don't want to get rid of any of these. I really like these birds. And so, and then I had the same thing with my pullets out of my Smoky Blue line. There's a little more color variation in that breed, because we still haven't kind of got that blue set in terms of light blue versus dark blue versus kind of a medium blue. But same thing, they all weighed within the acceptable range. Type was good. You just kind of get up there, get them up on the table where you can really look at them the first time, and I'm just kind of like, I like these birds. And so it really became an issue where you're starting to nitpick the birds, and look for minor flaws as disqualifiers. And then,
So-
kind of to Lisa's point, I took my cull Welsummers to the swap, and I didn't hardly get them set out, and they were gone. And there was no arguing price or anything. It's like, I'll take them.
So Matt, what would you attribute those results with, like those ideal weights being so closely related, the evaluation of them being so good that you don't want to part with anything that you might have done?
I think it's the 7 years leading up to it's kind of the culmination. I hatch a lot more chicks than Erin does, but Erin's been working with her birds, and I think you get to a point where you never achieve perfection, but you get your line kind of set to where they look like they're supposed to. And when you start with hatchery or not good breeder quality birds, there's a long process and a lot of things to kind of sort through. And so, yeah, it just felt satisfying that it's like, not that the journey's over, but we probably hit a level with those two breeds where it's like, I probably am not going to need to hatch as many chicks to kind of maintain this. And I can take them places and not necessarily have to apologize for this flaw or that flaw. And yeah, we're our own worst critics when it comes to our birds, but
right. Thank you.
And then the second thing is on my Erminettes, and that's been another journey from kind of ground zero. And those birds had a lot of issues. There was a lot of junk crossed in there, and so there was a lot of things going on with those birds. And in my second hatch, I've had a chance to go through my first two hatches now in terms of initial selection. And I set a group of birds up in my second hatch. I set the Erminette cockerels up, and right out of the gate, one of the boys really caught my eye. Just as soon as I got him in the cage, I'm like, okay, there's a bird that really stands out here. And so before I really did anything else, I grabbed him, I weighed him. He was right in the ideal range. Maybe a tiny bit light, but nothing. And then, then you're like, okay, let's check his keel. Let's check his abdomen depth, the things that you can't see. And just the way he stood. Erminette is a color-based breed, and so there's a lot of junk that can show up. And even with the simple, black specks over a white base, you can get too much of it or not enough of it, or kind of have a pattern that doesn't necessarily work. And so this guy scored as high as any bird I've ever done. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really looking forward to seeing him, at 6 months and at 12 months. And I really think this might be the guy that gets me started on kind of a little more of a pedigree mating program. It's really got me looking for some females that are of similar quality that I can really start pairing up. And as Kenny Triano likes to say, you look for that superior bird and then do your best to clone it. And I feel like that might be I might be in that spot with this guy.
So you're excited is what you're saying.
Yep.
That's what I'm hearing. All right. Thanks, Matt. Karen, what do you got?
Oh, well, so I didn't, just because you're going to ask this later, but with what was going on in my personal life and the USPS this year, I actually did not ship any birds anywhere. So I didn't sell much of anything because I just said no to everybody. But that let me do a whole lot more experimenting. So I did after our incubation live stream, I did I was able to dip 100 eggs in disinfectant before I set them and do 100 eggs not with them evenly split amongst all the things. And I got a 12% higher hatch rate from the disinfected eggs than I did from the not.
Cool.
So that was, I used to, I mean, and whenever I hatch for anybody else, I disinfect their eggs before they go into my incubator. So, I mean, I wasn't scared of it. I just wasn't really thinking to do it on my own. But I'll probably do that from now on. Although dipping them and air drying them and all that right before they go in makes setting them that night a much longer process. So, but because I don't think I'd want to disinfect them ahead of time. Do you know what I mean? Like I left it till I was actually going to set them. But
What did you use?
I used Tektrol.
Did you?
Just there's directions on the bottle for hatching eggs, so I followed those. Yeah. And then I also did this year in my wine cooler I set up some automatic turners. So I did some 30-day-old eggs just to see. So I got a 70% fertility on those eggs and a 50% hatch rate on the 30 days. 30 days in the but I the day after they were laid, I moved them into the wine cooler onto the automatic turning. So I was glad too. That helps me as being able to, when you're single mating, I want to be able to hatch, 12 birds from that one girl, not 3 from each of them. Do you know what I mean?
That's amazing, Karen. Wow.
So, those were okay. I like that.
They're definitely successes.
And then,
you're a pioneer.
Karen, before you go on, thank you for the data. You're just kind of slip that in there calm and smoothly. Like this is big stuff. So you did one test, 100 birds each of the disinfected versus not infected. Did you repeat that by any chance? I mean,
of course not.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I just disinfected from then on. It was enough for me. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, what else you got? You were going to say something else.
No, I want all the people on the side to ignore me, but I want to put in a plug for people to go if they're going from breeding for the first time or trying to breed, you might try to take skip the flock breeding and go straight to the pedigree. It has been a huge eye opener. Single penning all my birds. You know what I mean? Like I now know number 17 lays exactly the same shade of egg all year long on the same, and I know number 2 has a huge variety every day. You never know what color brown her egg is going to be. But some have a consistent size. Before when I was getting, let's say I had a pen of 8 birds and I was getting 5 eggs a day, like my brain was telling me that I was getting eggs from everybody sort of evenly, but just not. And now I know for the most part, it's usually 4 of them are laying every single day. And you might have an occasional bird that's, but their Hogan measurements were all the same. So I now have a little bit less faith in the Hogan method when it comes to, not that I believe it for in production and out of production, but telling the difference for me from like a 220 bird from a 180 bird, I'm not sure it can do that with my ability to assess it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I finally have found my 3 lines. I'm gonna do a homestead line that includes some broodiness. I'm doing a purely on looks, aesthetics. They have to be productive still because otherwise they won't reproduce. But I'm doing a show bird line and I'm doing a production. Again, they have to look like a Rhode Island Red, but I'm also gonna base some on production, like my most productive birds, and see like where the 3 end up. And since they're all singly penned, some birds can be in multiple lines. You know what I mean? Like, so people looking for, so I'm just excited to finally have a direction. I've picked something. Yeah. Although I picked 3 things, but still.
So Karen, a couple things there. And first of all, so for the folks listening, if you have a question as we go along, type it in the chat. We'll try to circle back and get it. If it's relevant to what we're talking about, we'll ask about it. If not, we'll hold it till later. So in those birds that you said, you pretty much realized that 4 birds lay every day and the other 4 would be like whatever they want to do, right?
Yeah.
So how are you factoring that into your decisions? Like, what are you using that information to make selection?
Well, yeah. So that's, I mean, a lot of the haven't laid an egg. I mean, they lay one egg a week all through spring. Those birds are gone. So, I mean, so now my spreadsheets before used to be, these are my 10 of the same age, and I would get a percentage. And so now each bird has its own percentage. But it also, the spreadsheet still accumulates up. So, I mean, it's sort of cheating, but my lay rate is way higher now because I've weeded out the birds that aren't laying. I mean, so, I mean, it's sort of cheating, but I'm assuming that it's going to work. But I've kept like my most attractive bird, the bird I would enter in a show if I had one today. She's not laying as well. She's at she is still laying a little bit, but her lay rate over the spring was only about 60%, and she's 2 years old, so that's a little lower than in the actual spring that I would want. But so I didn't get rid of her. She's never gonna be in my production bird triangle.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, so just deciding, I mean, I don't hate broodiness as much as some people, and Rhode Island Reds they're okay either way. You get to choose. You get a lot of power when you're a breeder, what you allow and what you accept, and what I mean, like, so. But this year I decided I really do like a uniform egg color. I don't really like it when and nobody cares what a Rhode Island Red egg looks like. I mean, there's nobody out there but it just seems to me like their system's working better when
Karen cares.
Yeah. Well, just like I said, I feel like their reproductive system is working better. Oh, and I forgot to say the other reason the single pen, so number 7, I've had a problem over the years. I know I talk too much, but I had a problem over the years with my Rhode Island Reds dropping dead between 2 and 3 years old. Never had that with my Australorps, so I don't think it was me. Do you know what I mean? And so this year I had, like usual, one of my number 79, she just was laying eggs. I hatched a bunch from her, and then just one day she was gone. She had laid 3 eggs that week. You know what I mean? So it's a sudden thing, not an illness thing. And so I was able to call out all her offspring this year. You know what I mean? I still have them because I'm not a monster,
right.
but they won't stay. Yeah. But I mean, so I'm able to get her out of my, out of my group. And so I'm really curious to see if my problem stops. And again, it's not terrible. I mean, 2 to 3, that's not, dropping dead at 6 months. But I lose 2 or 3 each year in that age range. And I'd like to stop doing that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karen. Good stuff. All right, so let's shift gears here a little bit. I'm not seeing any questions, so folks, either you're sitting back and relaxing and enjoying the show, or you got it all figured out. So questions are welcome. Let's go the other direction here. What, if anything, didn't go well this year? And then what are you going to do to address it? Like what decisions will you make going forward based on that result? So who wants to tackle this first?
I'll go because we've already talked about it before. The post office. The post office was horrible this year. I was with, who else said they weren't shipping eggs? Was it Lisa? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we shipped eggs all over. Everybody wanted fertilized eggs. We had problems every single time. The post office, the box would come totally damaged. We used foam egg packing. The post office never said it was their fault. I had to reimburse people. We had problems shipping chicks. Really big problem for us this year. We've never had that before. We stopped shipping eggs. We only would do local for fertile eggs. And I think it definitely was a problem with shipping chicks.
And are you going to reevaluate that in 2022, or what do you think that leaves you?
We're really stuck with, it's really hard to ship chicks. And we're on the West Coast. It's not like we're central to a whole bunch of stuff, but we even tried using UPS for shipping eggs, and they didn't do any better of a job. So I'm open to suggestions. I know Mike did a big article in the Grit magazine. I'd love to hear what other people are getting that's working.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. So we'll come back to it. If you're listening, if you have some thoughts on the shipping of chicks things, make yourself known.
Erin, that's crazy because sitting out here in the middle of Kansas, I had one issue with my very last shipment last year with chicks that got stuck in a warehouse in Little Rock, and 0 issues this year.
Wow.
I mean, I made 30 shipments. Now, last year I did have eggs just get beat to scrambling.
Yep.
The first half of the year I had no issues. The last half of the year I couldn't ship an egg without that box just getting crushed. This year I really discouraged, I made people talk me into shipping them eggs. And I didn't have any issues, but I only probably shipped like 5 shipments of eggs. But chicks, everything happened pretty much as it should be. So the rumor I'm hearing post office wise, there are a couple regional centers that are just disasters.
Mm-hmm.
And Fresno is one of them. And so I don't know if your stuff's going through Fresno or not, but
I don't think so. We'll go through West Sacramento.
yeah. So there's another one in upstate New York, but I mean, that's all hearsay. There's no,
Yeah, and I just got 100 birds or so in the mail from Iowa. It came on time and a day ahead of what I thought it would be. So hopefully that things will turn a corner here as we round out this year. Let's see, we got Susan saying they handed us a box of dead chicks. They also opened the box and tried to feed and water them and called them day 4. Not much happens with complaints. Yeah, so it is. She also is agreeing there that West Sacramento is horrible. The post office, I guess. Okay. Who else wants to share a challenge?
I had a self-inflicted challenge. They say that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the jaw, and I did it to myself. I been having an issue with feed, not necessarily the quality of the feed, but the dispensing and such. And I went through a number of things trying to determine what was the best route. And I spent all last fall working on it. And my problem is I spent too long working on it. And so I made a feed change. I didn't get it done till the 1st of December. And I've got all my breeding pens set up. I'm ready to start collecting eggs around the 20th, 25th of December. I switch feed and everything goes to hell. A bunch of my older birds quit laying. My hatchability rates, fertility rates. There was a transition there, and I just did it at the worst possible time. It's good feed and it's going to work long term, but short term, it was an unmitigated disaster. And so my first hatch that I did in mid-January, I expect about 250 chicks. I got 106. My second hatch a week later, I expected 220 chicks. I got 73.
Wow.
It got a little better. The next round, I got 140 and 113. But the gist of it is I like to do 3 hatches for myself, for my breeders, and I ended up doing 5 to kind of get some decent numbers. And now I've got grow outs everywhere because you have a grow out pen. It doesn't matter if you put 20 in there or 40 in there, they use up the whole growing pen. And so it's just been, I have, if I could fire myself, I would, because it's entirely my doing. And I mean, it even, so we had to commit to processing issues or processing dates early on. Well, that doesn't work if you don't have birds.
Mhm.
And so it's, with the COVID year and processing being a real challenge and having to commit way early and commit to high numbers. It's just been my working disaster. And it's a total rookie mistake. And there are no excuses for it.
Yeah.
Nobody
Experience.
survives breeding without a feed challenge. Like that's required of every. Everybody has to try something that goes absolutely horrible.
Yeah, well, that was my experience.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else? Lisa or Karen? Got a challenge?
Mine's kind of related to the system that we use of our collaborative breeding group. So there are a number of us. And one of the challenges that hit us this year, it's a great system when it works well because it shares the labor load, certainly for, customer service and sales and incubation and, delivery of chicks and all that. But when it goes awry partway through the season, when you have orders that you have to fulfill, it proved a little bit challenging. I thought I was going to be able to handle a lot more than I ended up getting pretty exhausted, I guess, by it. And the challenge for us was due to the fact that everyone in our breeding group is over 60. And we had health issues, maybe not all of us individually, but family members that we had to deal with. And so it took out some of the members of our group. I was making an effort to try and kind of hold some things together. I had some obligations during the spring as well. And we had kind of gone to these larger orders. So even though I love the collaborative model, and I think it's really helps us approach being able to develop more of a sustainable local poultry production system without young people to start infusing into it and started wondering. So one of the things that we also did this year is we're always trying to get younger farmers involved. And we did a number of what we're calling small farm grants, where we actually granted chicks to farmers and trying to get them kind of interested in using heritage birds and mentoring with some of them to help them develop sustainable flocks. So it was kind of like I couldn't talk them into it. So I figured if I start giving them birds and showing them how great the birds are and how to incorporate them into their business models, then maybe we'll get some breeders. And we've got one. I think that we're adding to the group, and they've actually taken on my leg bars because I needed to kind of move out one breed and concentrate just on my two. So that was kind of has been a challenge, and I'm not sure what the results are going to be, but
Right.
Best laid plans.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes or so here. Karen, do you got anything for us as we?
Oh, I think you've got better things to talk about. We'll just go back to, remember when I said I basically didn't sell any chicks this year? That would be my biggest mistake that I made. So even the people who are willing to come pick them up, for anybody who doesn't know, with taking care of mom, I just was not up for selling anything this year, and I'm going to pay for it all year long or not pay for things all year long. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for sharing that. There's a lot of very good insights in there. I think if you haven't listened to this show, if you didn't catch us, you're gonna have to go back and watch from the beginning, because there's lots of relevant, tangible takeaways. But we do have a couple questions here. So in our last 10 minutes, if you have a couple questions, let's go ahead and bring them out. We'll talk about them. We got one here about feed. I think probably Matt, this came on when you were talking about feed for your layers. So what feed are you using for your layers? And maybe talk about what you changed to.
Well, back when I started using a ADM makes a game bird breeder that is a high protein layer ration that works really well for heritage birds. I switched away from that about 4 years ago to a locally processed ration supplemented with mineral and a few other products from Fertility. And I had good luck with that as well. The challenge I was having is one of my local farmers was helping me with the grind, and we just couldn't get the grind right. And I was ending up with waste. The birds were sifting through there. I was ending up with a lot of fines, and I lived with that for a while, and then the fines kind of turned into a rodent problem. The wasted feed accumulating in the floor, and pretty soon it just got to the point where it was unacceptable. And I looked at a pellet mill. I looked at a couple ways to get around it, which was how I spent my time last fall doing research. And inevitably, I ended up back with the ADM mash, which is I think 21% protein. It's good feed. You have to order it in bulk, and so you have to order 1,500 pounds of it at a time. So it's a little bit of a challenge from a small user problem, or if maybe a group of folks could go together on something. But anyway, that's where I'm at now. I knew the birds did well on it previously, but I just, like I said, I made the switch at exactly the wrong time.
Okay, thank you. So here, whoever wants to chime in here, how much feed does it take to get a chick to laying age? Anybody have records on that?
There's too many different. I can't answer. There's too many different breeds. Too many different.
I mean,
when they lay is different for every breed, and how much they eat, and how big is your bird.
What about a Rhode Island Red in North Carolina?
I actually can't even answer that. I'll admit it. You caught my weakness.
I don't have it right in front of me to know it exactly.
Why don't you tell us what a sex link would take to get to laying age, Mike? You know that.
Depends on what environment they're raised in. If it's under strict commercial conditions, it's probably like 12 pounds to get them to that 16-week gauge, which is just a little bit before laying. My Americanas that I raised out over the winter for started pullets was about 18 pounds is what it took me to get them to. Most of them I raised about 20 weeks. So they were in that 18 to 20 pound range, is what I budgeted. It was pretty close to that. So that would be the number I would use. I would use, sex link. I'd probably be looking at budgeting 16 weeks or 16 pounds to get them up into that 17, 18 week range. Right before lay. That's mostly what I deal with. And then other birds closer to 18 to 20 would be my budget.
And that's with pretty efficient feeding methods without a lot of waste. So,
well, if you're an APPPA member, you should have efficient feeding methods.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing any of this crazy stuff you find on the internet.
Yeah.
So let's see here. What do we got here? Looks like we got a couple questions. We'll see if we can squeeze them in here. Speaking of this, Allison that's just says she's always impressed with Karen's record keeping, but that she typed that before you didn't know your lay, your feed.
Feed to lay.
And that's a problem with raw data. I have a record of every bit of feed that, not per chick, but that's ever been fed, but I've never done anything with it. So raw data doesn't do any good if you don't analyze it and put it to use. So you need to correlate them together with age and feed,
So Susan has a question here, Matt. This has come back to you. Real quick, if you could look at what Susan said there. How much lead time with the new feed would you suggest before you start collecting your hatching eggs? Sounds like it took you about 3 hatches to level out.
I would say about 3 months to get the birds, because I think, if I'd have done that earlier, I should have done that kind of through the molt process. If I would have switched feed earlier, I probably would have triggered a molt. Just the way those birds go, and so I would give 3 months prior to getting serious about hatching before on a feed change.
Okay, thank you. Let's see what else we got here. Molly was asking where everybody was located, or where some people were located. We touched that on the top of the show, but real quick, Matt's in Kansas, Erin is in California, Karen is in North Carolina, Lisa is in Washington, and I'm everywhere, or in Pennsylvania. So got another question here. We missed this, Karen. What was the sanitizer you used on the eggs before you incubated them?
I just used the stuff that I had. I used Tektrol, TEKTROL. I used the gallon stuff, not the aerosol spray. I'm not sure I would do that, but maybe it doesn't matter. But Allison's in the chat. Allison Stewart's in the chat. Maybe she can say what she uses too, since it was her idea that reminded me. So.
And Allison says that sanitizing eggs is the way to go. If you missed our incubation panel a couple months ago, then you missed Allison adamantly recommending that you sanitize your eggs and go against all internet wisdom. And you heard Karen's results earlier, so good stuff. I like to bring it back, folks, when we can. We like to connect the shows wherever possible. So we got about 3 minutes here, 5 minutes before we wrap up. And Katie wants to know if each of you fine panelists would be willing to comment on why you've chosen the breeds you're developing and working with. So let's real quickly, 30 seconds, and I'm just going to call on you. So Erin, what made you choose your Delawares?
I went to the Livestock Conservancy, looked up their list of heritage poultry, looked at what was threatened, critical, etc., and chose the Delaware.
Thank you. Matt, pick one and tell us why you bred them.
Oh no, pick one.
I'm gonna pick the Erminettes because I really was looking for something meaningful, and starting with a breed that was at one time thought to be extinct really was a challenge that spoke to me, and so that's I had time and energy and space to tackle something I didn't know what I was getting into, but I had the time and energy and space to tackle it, so that's why I picked it.
Yep. Thank you, Matt. And if for folks that don't know, Matt is does a lot of preservation work. He mentioned in other live streams that we've done that's his call. That's what he finds passion in. So, Lisa.
Welsummers because of their great layers of gorgeous eggs, and Heritage Barred Rocks because I wanted a true heritage dual-purpose breed that I could also use in a lot of different sex-link crosses.
Great, thank you. And Karen.
Pick the Rhode Island Red because they're the best breed. Or I like a large lazy bird, not lazy as in they can't get their job done, but I don't like flighty birds. I like birds that stay inside of my poultry netting. And a little bit of a color challenge, but not a pattern, like a true pattern bird. So, and I did not think I was ready to bring a bird back from extinction as a new breeder. So thought I'd just stick with trying to keep one going. So,
keep one alive.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Past 3. Yes, that's my goal. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. and I'm not breeding anything. I just got rid of my geese earlier in the year. But I am raising pullets, so
It's time for guineas. You haven't tried guineas yet.
I'm probably not going to. But I would like if some of you folks were closer to me, I would raise out some of your grow out birds for you. Let's see what else we got here. Coming through the, so we got a comment here from Carlos in Mexico, saying real quick that he imported parent stock from a dominant CZ. I guess that's Czech, in the Czech Republic. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Crossing Sussex females with Rhode Island Reds, having some troubles. Can you give me any information about a breeder in the U.S. that can export good quality parent stock? I'm guessing you're talking both breeds there, Sussex or Rhode Island Reds. So feels like that's like a softball question in some ways, right? Are you ready to ship to Mexico yet, Karen?
No, I'm not even shipping in the United States, and definitely not in July. So,
Yeah.
I sent
no.
a book to Mexico about a month and a half ago, and I don't know where it is. It could be in Mexico, it could be in a post office somewhere, but it didn't get to where it was going. So
There's some Rhode Island Reds that have made their way to the Philippines this year. So you might check out Facebook and see if you can track down who shipped them there. And maybe they'll be easier to export from the Philippines to Mexico than it is from the United States. But don't know.
anybody have any thoughts there on breeders that might export or breeders that are doing those breeds?
No, and Sussex aren't super common in the States, to my knowledge, the white Sussex.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Carlos. That's a tough one. Keep searching. That's one instance where the internet would probably be your friend if you could find some good leads there. The problem, I guess, would always be whether or not they are good and quality stock. That's always the wild card, isn't it?
Well, and if your goal is a hybrid, I'm not sure how much it matters. How you want healthy, vigorous parent stock, but they don't need to win in the shows. So yeah.
Allison, breeder down here in Maryland, or down there in Maryland, says extremely hard to export birds. Yeah, as I figured it would be. All right. Well, we're at we've crossed the top of the hour and started the bottom of the next one. So that's what we're gonna call it there, folks. I want to first of all thank all of our viewers here, people who were coming in, listened, commented, engaged with us. Thank you so much for giving up your hour with us. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Erin. I just like saying your names back to back. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Matt, for sharing your wins and your successes with us, and your challenges with us here this evening. And lots of good stuff. I think there's some stuff that will find its way into a future great article. Some good takeaways tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
You bet. Good night, everybody.
Good night.